Hello, everyone. My name's Craig Ramsey, and I'm Head of Real-Time Payments at ACI Worldwide. And today we're going to be talking about that all-important subject. How do you make money from real-time instant payments? So without further ado, let's move on with the presentation. And I look forward to sharing our insights and thoughts about the instant payments growth around the world. One thing, just before I start, you'll notice a QR code on screen. Some of the data that we're presenting today is based on our Prime Time for Real Time report 2024. That's a free report sharing information about 51 different countries. And if you're interested in reading that report, don't worry, no need to get an instant payment sent to me or a check or anything else that may be necessary. It's all free and you can access it via the QR code. So let's move on, shall we? So, what should we talk about today? Well, firstly, we'll talk about the growth and the adoption of instant payments. Who's winning in the market right now? What's happening in 2024 that's affecting instant payments growth? What are those all important use cases that people are using around the world? And banks are seeing revenue and growth coming out of those use cases. We'll talk about how to make money from those use cases, but we'll also be talking about how to save money as well, both sides of the equation to help that bottom line. We'll talk about economic growth, where instant payments benefits everybody. And finally, we'll make some predictions as we look forward into the future to see how instant payments will be growing. So first thing I want to do is talk a little bit about how instant payments have adopted around the world. There's actually more than 70 countries that have already adopted instant payments. And here you'll see those countries colored in a darker blue color. Those are the countries that are live and in production with instant payments. And that light blue color represents countries that are looking at their adoption of instant payments. How will they benefit their consumers, their merchants, and their businesses when they adopt instant payments in country? Now, thankfully, we are seeing significant growth across the world on instant payments. And as I say, this data is all represented in our Prime Time for Real Time Payments report. The biggest countries around the world are India, Brazil, China, and Thailand, all who have adopted instant payments as a new normal. Asia is largely adopted and mature, and you can certainly see that in the statistics on screen with the volume and the growth that we're seeing in that region. The biggest movements of regions around the world are in the Middle East and Latin America. And Latin America actually has had real-time instant payments for quite a while, but we're seeing changes in how instant payments have been adopted in countries that are driving new growth and new use cases. Europe has just mandated the use of instant payments. All financial institutions will be mandated to send and receive instant payments on behalf of their customers. In the US, we can see the clearinghouse has been in production for a number of years now. And together with Zelle and Venmo and other services, we've seen the move to faster payments in the US. Just last July, FedNow was launched. And finally, obviously, Canada. Canada has had Interac e-transfer for a number of years, and with 280 FIs adopting it, we're now seeing that 5.9% of all electronic payments are over an Interac e-transfer. But we're looking ahead as well to the adoption of the real-time rails. And that's obviously had a few stumbling blocks just recently. And will it come soon enough? Because what we do note with Canada is a rather slow adoption from where we are today to where the country could be. And we'll be talking a little bit more about that as we go through this presentation. Now, another way to look at the adoption of instant payments is to look at transactions by head of population over 15. That actually gives us a rather unique view in that it equalizes population. With the size of Brazil and India's population, quite frankly, you can prove anything with those statistics. But when we normalize it to head of population that's banked, you might be interested to learn, for example, that India's banked population is not too dissimilar to that of the US. So when we see huge adoption in India, it's something that we can actually be understanding of, and we can see what the potential of in countries that haven't yet seen their full growth potential. As we look at that head of population transactions per month, Bahrain takes the top spot. Brazil is second, Argentina third, Thailand fourth. Brazil has been a heavily adopted country. And actually, an interesting statistic from Brazil since the adoption of PIX, when PIX was launched in 2020, some 40 million new bank accounts have been opened. India, meanwhile, isn't at top spot any longer. You can see it down there in sixth position, where although we have seen tremendous growth, there's actually a lot more that's still possible with the size of the population. Europe's only entrants will be the ever innovative Netherlands and the ever progressive Sweden. You can see them in the solution as well. Where's Canada, I hear you say? Well, Canada's currently will be 33rd on the list come 2028. That's 33rd in the ranking of adoption by head of population. And sorry, I have even worse news. That's actually dropping from 21st from last year. So you can see that the current solution has taken us so far in Canada, but without the adoption of real-time rails and without the adoption of the use cases, actually Canada's adoption will slow and will actually start falling behind many other nations. Next thing I want to look at is actually we'll do a double click on some of the major economies around the world. What have we seen happen there? And indeed, next we'll look at what's changing. So some economies have certainly got progress to make. They've got room for improvement. The US has come a long way and is now considered a maturing instant payments market. Zelle, Venmo, and the clearinghouse real-time payment have all driven use cases for moving money faster. Our prediction by 2028 is that US volumes will be 4 times what they are now, and bringing that into 31st in the market. That's just 2 places ahead of Canada. So again, room to move. And what we're seeing there in the US is that cards still rule the day. In the UK, Faster Payments was launched in 2008. But it uses an 8583, an ISO 8583 standard. And quite frankly, that's holding the the UK back. Initiatives such as open banking and pay by bank and even requests for pay have been slow to be adopted. And despite the double-digit growth, the UK is 11th in adoption now, but will be 22nd in adoption by 2028. Australia was a little slow with the NPP taking off. We saw certainly some growth, but what we have seen recently is some changes there. We'll talk about those in just a second. And even with NPP being somewhat slow, it still accounts for just over 6% of all electronic transactions in 2023. Again, cards and tap payments, as they call them, contactless payments, rule the day in Australia. It's certainly a hard it's a hard proposition. It's a hard user experience to beat when you're in a bricks and mortar store. If we look at what's actually changing in some of those countries, the US launch of FedNow by the Federal Reserve has really started to see change. The US Federal Reserve made it quite clear that their target is every financial institution in the US. The clearinghouse have got some very strong adoption, but they've only seen certain FIs wanting to adopt the clearinghouse real time. The Federal Reserve is going after everyone. And what we're now seeing as a service provider, ACI, is we're seeing actually strong growth for clearinghouse RTP and adoption of FedNow as well. Financial institutions are not choosing one or the other, they're choosing both to support now in order to provide the true interoperability that they need to get to both networks. In the UK, we've been promised an upgrade to faster payments for some years. The new payments architecture, NPA, has been launched and has been hitting a few speed bumps along the way that certainly slowed it down. And at the moment, we have no clear date of when we might see new payments architecture rolled out. That will bring ISO 20022 and will enable the adoption of those use cases that the nation craves. I sit here as a UK resident, and yes, I can pay my bills and I can send money to friends and family, but actually engaging with merchants and e commerce using it, faster payments is almost impossible. In Australia, they launched Pay2. That's their request for pay service. And it's really engaged the consumers and the billers in the market to see strong adoption. The utilities are engaging with that, and with the potential retirement of direct entry in Australia, we'll see an ever increasing move of transactions to the MPP rails. So that's some of the countries that have had a few speed bumps along the way on their journey, but there's also many success stories in instant payments. And as Canada looks forward to its adoption of real-time rails, there's plenty of experience out there. There's plenty of examples of successful use cases and indeed not so successful use cases that will help drive the right propositions for the consumers, merchants, and billers in country. If we look at some of those success stories, we look at places like Bahrain. Remember them? They were top of the list for adoption of head of population. But we're seeing use cases such as P2P, merchant payments, and QR code payments, all being driven by government adoption of requests for pay and bill payments. There's a whole, the whole country is supportive of seeing instant payments rolled out, and that's why we're seeing such heavy adoption. There's a few extra incentives as well. For example, transaction fee has been waived for low value payments. That's certainly helping the adoption. That helps merchants and consumers alike be able to move payment. And then we're seeing strong brand identity in Bahrain that's interesting. When they talk about doing an instant payment in Bahrain, they don't talk about it as a real time instant payment. They give it a name. It has an identity, and that identity helps everyone relate to it and understand exactly what it means to them. Finally, in Bahrain, we're seeing the introduction of a national addressing service, and that really helps. That helps easy party recognition for making an instant payment to a third party. In Brazil, now obviously Brazil's got quite a large population. It's roughly 5 times the population of Canada. But we're still seeing those transaction types P2P, P2B, B2P, the government adopting and business adopting, and use cases such as merchant payments, scheduled future payments, request to pay, bill payments, and government payments all being driven via the new PIX scheme, PIX, the new PIX scheme. After 4 months, they did their first billionth payment in PIX. And now there are over 37 billion transactions a year running through PIX in Brazil, which coincidentally accounts for about 37% of all transactions across the country. And if you're interested in more information about Brazil, then I encourage you again to look at our Prime Time for Real Time report. There'll be a QR code at the end of this presentation that can give you further insights. Into the Netherlands. Now, the Netherlands is about half the population of Canada. But by 2028, it will be supporting 4.2 billion payments, or 3 times the volume of it, and every citizen doing 6 times the number that we're seeing in Canada, for example. So some great adoption in the Netherlands, and very much a new business as usual, the new normal, as the Dutch call it, for paying payments. There's further move in Europe with what was previously called the EPI, it's now called the Wero mobile wallet, and the scheme in the Netherlands will see merging of Ideal, which is heavily used in country, with that Wero wallet. Really, the Dutch are all in on instant payments, and I don't think the Dutch will mind me saying this. If it's not profitable and beneficial, then typically the Dutch don't do it. So this is purely based on customer experience and the benefits that it can bring across the entire payments ecosystem. If we look at some of the successful use cases, let's give them some names. We talk about P2B and B2B and all those other things, but Social fintech payments. We're seeing payments using everyday social media applications being used across the world. For example, payments using WhatsApp and Google in India or WeChat in China. We're seeing QR codes being extensively used. For example, nationalized QR codes have been introduced on many of the real-time rails. QR codes for bills, QR codes for point of sale, QR codes are online and offline merchants. You walk down a street in India and you'll find QR codes for the street sellers needing to sell their products using QR codes and UPI only, please, no cash here. So we're very much seeing a drive to those across the many of the successful examples in Bahrain, in India, in Brazil, in Singapore, Malaysia's Do It Now initiative, and obviously China and UnionPay have really driven growth in QR codes as a simple way of initiating a payment transaction. We're seeing requests for pay services used across the world, pre-integrated with e-invoicing and corporate ERP solutions for helping those corporates do those requests for pay services. So it's not just about consumers being driven for requests for pay. There's B2B payments that can leverage requests for pay services and successful implementations across the Middle East and South Asia. Direct debits and mandates, supporting one-time and recurring future-dated payments on real-time rails. For example, maybe you can pay your Netflix subscription using a scheduled recurring payment using the real-time rails. And finally, some interesting examples of offline payments using the real-time rails. The ability to make offline payments when the consumer doesn't have access to internet connectivity. It uses offline wallets, it syncs up with UPI when it does have a connection. And we're seeing that as a use case in India to drive some of the more rural communities into also being able to support real-time rails, obviously having an impact on financial inclusion at the same time. So we get to that all important question. How do you make money from a real-time instant payment? Well, you must monetize the fintechs. They have great propositions, great examples of how they can engage with customers. Don't try as a bank to come up with all the innovation yourself. You must work with the fintech community, and that will drive more products and services that you can sell or resell to your customers. It gives you that revenue stream. Make sure you're using all of your systems. There's a certain element of with many RTGS and wire systems only using them during the day. Well, as we see a merging of different payment types or merging of processing around different payment types, I should say, we're seeing the ability to leverage a full 24/7 access to the systems. With that, you can offer new propositions, new batch-based propositions that may be heavy load in the evening or at night time when your systems are less active. We're seeing an improved customer experience. Imagine the insurance broker or the insurance seller who's working a claim for one of their customers. Maybe they've had a hurricane or a tornado rip through their house and now they're in need of cash. Well, joking aside, no point sending them the check because the mailbox is no longer there. Send them an instant payment, allow them to engage with their contractors immediately, and that drives customer satisfaction and drives customer loyalty. People will come back if they know that the payment experience and most importantly the refund experience or indeed the payment the receipt of a claim experience is an excellent one. That drives business for your customers and obviously drives business for you as a bank indirectly. You can also increase sales by avoiding late and no payment fees, card abandonment, for example. These are all very important to merchants, both in store and e-commerce. And with an instant payment, you can drive a better experience, and we see less customers actually abandoning the entry of their credit card, particularly when it's engaged with a directory service where they haven't actually had to provide their account number or their credit card number. They can engage using an alias, which enables them to feel a lot more secure, and that drives customer experience as well. We're seeing a lot of banks looking at the data of an instant payment. An instant payment typically travels on ISO 20022 data standards, and that enables a lot of use of that data to determine how customers are engaging with products and services, how they might need special services. Think about a real-time interest quote for loans if your customers running low on cash on any week, rather than having to go to a payday lender. Maybe they can come to the bank and you can service them better that way. So promote the use of instant payments as a way of avoiding many things, but also benefiting from more. These will all drive that customer engagement, the customer improvement, the customer loyalty, and of course, more business, as well as um, the next thing we're going to talk about, which is actually about saving money as well. Both sides of the equation. This last slide on the revenue side just looks across different use cases, and we'll be providing this PowerPoint to everyone who'd like to see a copy of it. But you can see different types of use cases have also got different ways that you can make money from offering those particular use cases. So let's look at that, how to save money. Um, you can There's many ways to save money with an instant payment. Firstly, you can reduce the number of exceptions. Imagine lowering your exceptions on failed payments or problematic payments, where more of them are straight through, more of them are complete with the data you need that ISO offers. You can future proof to save costs on further innovation to come. Instant payments are not a one-time thing. What we're talking about here is a new payment type, a new payment service for decades to come. It's a seismic change in the types of payments that are offered to customers. So by bringing in the right environment, you can actually start to modernize your solutions and prepare for even more use cases, whatever they may be, as they're offered. You can't have a conversation about any type of payment without recognizing the risks and challenges associated with fraud. But we're seeing improved fraud with an instant payment because of the additional data. There's chance for with a request for pay, there's less chance of a bad actor. With services around an instant payment like verification of payee, that helps the person sending the money to feel more confident on it. And you can also give better training to customers. Um, Obviously, there's a lot of fraud out there with APP fraud, and an instant payment is a fast way of moving money. But it's not the payment itself that's fraudulent. It's actually the actor that's causing the transaction to be fraudulent. One of the things that ACI have been very strong vocally about is making sure that when you're doing fraud protections, it's not just the sender of the payment that should be responsible. It should be the receiver of the payment. After all, the receiver of the payment is the one holding the bad actor. So it's important that fraud protections are shared across both sending and receiving party, and the better data that ISO 20022 offers enables you to do a much more thorough analysis of data trends, bad acting trends, in order to provide that instant payment fraud protection. Finally, the last thing is about cloud. We're seeing a large movement of banks, data centers, and data services out to the cloud. ACI are a provider of managed service and SaaS offers for instant payments and other payment types. But one of the things that we are seeing is an ever increasing trend of financial institutions to move to the cloud. That's a good thing. That enables financial institutions to pick and choose the best services out there in order to create an ecosystem that works for them and their customers. And that includes access to things like the use cases and the value added services that so many people are looking for in order to drive that real-time payments adoption. The last thing that our report talks about is our economic growth, benefits for everybody. And sure enough, governments are looking at our report for economic growth and financial inclusion reasons as an industry driver for change in their countries. We have predicted that in 2026, instant payments will have saved $184 billion worth of uh, will have made $184 billion worth of savings, and that will have driven that economic growth accordingly. We're seeing a percentage point increase of GDP in countries that adopt real-time instant payments. So you can imagine why governments are very keen to see the adoption of real-time instant. And again, there's more data available in our report. That's just a quick snapshot of it. Finally, let's look towards the future. What does the future look like for our payments? Well, on the behavioral side, cards will continue to dominate many countries. We'll see slow adopters of real-time payments perhaps even becoming irrelevant to their customers. If you're not providing instant payments and the use cases around instant payments, consumers, businesses, merchants will find them elsewhere. So it's very important that banks continue to, as I said earlier, work with fintechs to make sure you're offering the full proposition. We'll see embedded finance driving payments innovation moving forward, and consumers, interestingly, will start to choose their merchants based on how they can pay with them. I think we all do that today. I certainly do it. I buy things from Amazon because of the super easy payments experience. The fact that I may be using a card or an instant, I don't really care. And it could move to an instant payment and save merchants money, particularly those small merchants where I, as a consumer, might actively seek out cheaper payment methods in order to support my local store. So, what's to come? Those new overlay services will drive adoption. Look out for the use cases, look out for the reasons why people want to use real time instant payments in the first place. That will be the secret sauce to the success of real time payments in country. Merchants will certainly want instant. They're already looking at cheaper ways of being paid, looking for ways to avoid interchange fees and other costs that they have with existing payment methods. Request for pay, I think, will be great, but it's going to be niche for a while. It's going to take a little while to see request for pay fully adopted. I know there's certainly lots of parties out there, including ACI, that are looking to drive request for pay forward, but pay by bank will be perhaps common first in the e-commerce market. Real-time payments will continue to fast-track the growth of cashless economies. When instant payments are adopted in country, we do not see them cannibalizing ACH or wire payments. Instead, it's changing the way that people are using almost liquid payments, I'll call them. Cash, checks, perhaps not checks as liquid, but cash and checks are certainly being impacted by the use of instant payments. And that does actually create some challenges for countries where they're looking to ensure access to cash in rural and vulnerable societies is still available. The countries will see a positive impact, and we're excited to follow the journey of Canada in its real-time Rails adoption and what it will mean for Canada as you grow your instant payments market. So with that, thank you very much for attending. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn if you've got any questions, or as I said, there's the QR code, and you're very welcome to download the Prime Time for Real Time 2024 report. Thank you very much. Bye bye.